People.
6, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I knew John was. Oh, yeah, there's not much. Yeah. All right, I got 7 o'clock. I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Take attendance. Brian,
Here.
John's out. I'm here. Tom. Mark. Sal.
Here.
Mike Reese,
Here.
Mike Sampson. Here. Sadie
Here.
and Karen. First, Mike sent out the minutes from November 21. Everybody have a chance to look at those? No, right, I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes as written.
Motion to accept.
1 second.
Second.
All right. Any discussion?
I have a question. I think that we asked about the state's recommendation for having a certain amount in the undesignated capital reserve. And so it was noted that the question was asked, but the answer from the attorney was not, or the answer that we received wasn't in the minutes. And I thought maybe it would be helpful to say it's not absolute, it's recommended.
Okay.
I thought. Because that's
Yeah, I saw
been
it
an
front back.
item of questioning along the way. I don't know.
All right. Sal, do you want to amend your motion to accept the minutes as amended?
Yes.
All right, Mike, do you want to second that?
Yep.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so I've got capital improvement plan is the main agenda item for tonight, and then I also put revenues because we didn't discuss those last time. I don't know if we're gonna discuss them or not, but they're on there. And then we'll discuss sort of what we want to do about the next meeting and perhaps a meeting in January and where we're at, so. So Claude, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Good evening. So, let me say up front that, there were a number of improvements in the capital improvement program this year. Many of them I give credit to,
Frank.
this guy, Frank. See you in a moment. At any rate, you get credit for improvements. There are also quite a few things that are different from the past. So because of that, I felt there were a number of points I wanted to communicate, so I created a two-sided sheet here that I handed out that I'd like to use as my script. I thought about it ahead of time, what would make sense, what sequence that would make sense to describe things. Last time I presented this to the planning board, I didn't have this script and I felt like I was kind of bouncing around. So here we go. Oh, and but as I go along, if you don't mind, if you have a question, it may be that it's going to be answered down, further down. So just regular questions, I would suggest you hold them if you can. But if I say something that's not clear, you don't understand, I just said something, you say, wait a minute, I don't understand that. Please stop me. I want to be sure that you understand what I say as we go along, all right? Okay, so this is an overview. This year's capital improvement program plan details out about $7.9 million of town spending over a 6-year period. I remind everyone that 6 years is what the state of New Hampshire recommends or prescribes for capital improvement programs. Our new town administrator, Chet, Frank, is using a more sophisticated computer planning tool. In the past, we had the basic Excel spreadsheet. He has a more sophisticated, it's still Excel based, but it's more sophisticated. It does include inflation planning, financing options, and recommends levels of appropriation to maintain assets. The committee, the CRP committee, raised the definition of capital this year for the first time in over 10 years. From $5,000 to a $10,000 threshold, which makes a lot of sense. Equipment less than $10,000, for example, computers, printers, chainsaws, so on, are no longer being tracked in the CIP plan. They'll be managed by the department heads and so on in their regular budgets, and they were in the regular budgets in the past anyway. But this year, for the first time, we've eliminated them completely from even being listed in the CIP planning tool. The tool includes a detailed plan for road construction, and I mean a detailed plan for the first time. We never had that before. And that it adds up to about $3 million worth of work over the 6-year period. There'll be more about roads later. The plan includes some, but not all, major building capital repairs. I want to emphasize capital repairs. For example, we're saying, it's been said that painting a building is not a capital repair. But putting a new roof on it is. Why? Because it extends the life of the building another 20 years, that kind of thing. Now, one comment, I know John Bergeron is not here tonight, and so I'd like to say that he's not happy with one element of the plan, which, it's item 6A here. The amounts and timing of the meeting house renovation projects and the pending grants, I say here, are not finalized. Back when we were trying to put this plan together in October, we have in here the numbers as best Chet knew them at the time. The numbers changed dramatically in the past month, but I can't keep chasing my tail and going back and changing a plan over and over and over again until the very last moment. So we left it the way it was. It was our best estimate at the time. John would point out that all the cost is shown in 2025 when it's actually going to spread over 3 years and so on. So keep that in mind on the meeting house item. If you look at the table, you can see it. The costs that were estimated a couple months ago are clearly shown there, and they're all shown in 2025. The truth is, with grants, it's not going to cost the town a whole lot of money anyway, and it will be spread out over a 3-year period. John told me that today. All right. Also, projected costs for a highway garage addition and town office upgrade are the same as they were the last couple of years. $300,000 gross estimate for a garage addition and a $400,000 gross estimate to do something about the town offices. There are no detailed plans for either of those yet, not at all. As those detailed plans get developed in the future, then more detailed cost estimates can be brought to bear. The fear is that the costs, depending on what is decided to be done, could go up significantly from the numbers we have in here right now. But that's the best we have for the moment. This plan includes equipment, not vehicles, but equipment. For example, police body cameras, police cruiser cameras, turnout gear, and extraction equipment that is over $10,000, the new threshold. But that kind of equipment is in the plan, and the plan is to use capital reserves to fund those kinds of items, again, over $10,000.
Excuse me, Claude, those items were in the past in the general fund, right?
Yes, they were. Those kinds of items, thank you, Sal.
Yep.
Like cameras and turnout gear we're in the town's budget, but they were in the general fund. Now we are showing them, we are including them in the capital improvement plan and planning to cover them with spending from capital reserves. Just as a reminder, last year, there were 4 pieces of highway equipment that the voters approved leases for. Several of them were very expensive. Just to remind everybody, 2 of those are here, they're in service. The grader and the backhoe are in service, and the 2 trucks are on order and are expected, I'm not sure exactly when, but that money's behind us, it doesn't show in the plan. Except for the lease payments show in the plan. Yeah, as you look at the plan, you'll see a string of lease payments next to each of those items. And I say the plan, you were all emailed by the secretary here, Mike, a couple of weeks ago, this plan that I referred to, the summary report, and in it are tables, and when I say to you, you can see those numbers next to that entry, I mean, in those tables, in that report.
And he gave us hard copies.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Wonderful.
when I say that, thank you, Mike. When I say you can see the lease payments next to those items, I mean in that document. You can look at them right now if you want. Now, this year, additional leases are proposed in the following three circumstances, and there was a reason why they're being proposed for each of different reasons. The first one is police cameras. They're being proposed to be leased because they are technologically, they go obsolete very quickly. By the time we use them for 5 years or so, they're obsolete. First of all, they have no resale value, and they are very expensive. So for that reason, it was recommended by Chet that we should be leasing police cameras. And then at the end of their life, the intention would be to continue leasing cameras. Not true with other lease items. But that is the intention right now, or the proposed intention from town administrator. A roadside mower is proposed to be leased. All other highway equipment from now on, we hope to purchase from capital reserves. The four we leased last year were to get us out of the hole. The idea being to purchase future equipment, except the roadside mower, because that thing gets all beat to hell, is the bottom line. Reliability, maintenance, repair issues, and so on. And the highway department and Chet recommend that we lease a roadside mower, basically, from now on, for those reasons. And thirdly, the fire department is proposing to replace engine 2 with a pumper / ladder truck, a combination truck. And that is at a very high cost, as you'll see in the plan, $1.2 million. That's somewhere near $300,000 more than a pure pumper would be. That we don't have $1.2 million in the fire capital reserves, and we aren't going to have it soon enough. The truck we have, we bought in 1998, so it's getting very old. So the proposal is to enter into a 7-year lease for that truck. A little bit more on that, maybe not. If not, I would recommend to the committee and those here on the committee who are with the select board that fire department request should be looked at carefully. For one thing, when the CIP committee asked the fire department, why do they want a ladder truck? You know, what's the need? The answer came back twice, to service the buildings at Cardigan Mountain School appropriately. That's the only answer we got. Secondly, I asked a couple of times if a ladder truck, which I think will be longer, will fit in the existing fire department garage. I got a quick answer of sure, it will, but I think that needs to be looked at very, very carefully to be absolutely sure. And back to Cardigan Mountain, I also don't know how much they pay the town in lieu of taxes. I wonder if it's anywhere near enough to justify the town spending that kind of money for a ladder truck, mainly for that one and only purpose. So I would suggest that the budget committee and the select board look very carefully at the fire department's proposal to get a ladder truck.
Are we gonna come back to this again, or?
And
'cause I have-
I don't plan to, so,
Well, I don't know
Let's-
this,
go
I
ahead.
don't know this personally, but I was told by somebody that I really trust and respect, that is familiar with these kinds of things, that said that educational institutions commonly make generous donations to the
Right.
towns within which
Yes.
they reside.
I've
for
heard
their
that too.
non-taxable assets, dorm rooms, things like that.
I've heard the
Not-
same.
I mean, non-educational assets, things that should be taxed. And it seems to me, if we're gonna buy a ladder truck, that maybe we can get
Well,
something.
that's what I'm suggesting, budget committee, maybe somebody in the town.
But I don't know that.
Should, I don't know either. It's not my business.
mean, I
Just
know
an
that
idea to float.
When we want to go into any of the detail of this, I have some things that I think I need to share.
Okay, should we finish the CIP first?
Yeah.
What?
I assume we're gonna come back to questions.
Come back to it, yeah, yes,
Okay.
yes. Okay, so that's enough on that one for right now. Let's finish the overview of the plan, and then you're right, we'll go back to questions. A bond issue is being proposed in this plan for road reconstruction of 3 roads that desperately need reconstruction soon. Goose Pond Road, River Road, and Switch Road. They're in very poor condition. We simply don't have enough money to do all 3 of them, let me say next year, or in the next 2 years. So a bond issue is being proposed, a 10-year bond issue, to get those 3 roads reconstructed as soon as possible. And those bond payments are reflected in the plan. And number 11, now that I've spoken about a few leases and a bond issue, all the lease payments, including the lease payments for last year's equipment and then a couple of new ones like the roadside mower, are covered in the plan. You can see the stream of lease payments. They are, and they would not require any other additional appropriations outside the appropriations to capital that are recommended in the plan. On the other side, number 12, the great news is that 98% of the cost for the three major bridge projects that I know everybody's aware of are expected to be covered by state and federal funds. Gristmill Hill Road, Potato Road, and Transfer Station Road. They're gonna, the expectation is that we'll receive about $10 million. Just a caveat, a footnote, the state is now saying that once they pay almost the full boat to replace a bridge like this, it's going to be on the town's nickel in the future to perform proper scheduled maintenance. I'm not sure we've ever really addressed that in the last 6 or 7 years I've been on CIP. There is one bridge in the CIP plan with some maintenance money scheduled next year for that very reason. The state may come back at a later date, 40 years from now, we say Potato Road Bridge needs fixing, they might say, go right ahead, no money, that kind of thing. So we need to keep that in mind. We may get $10 million, but we need to be cognizant of maintenance on bridges. An appropriation of the appropriation recommended for the coming year for 2025 is $1,024,195. Now that is a net increase of $43,868. Chet prepared a sheet that shows you the detail of that, which we did not hand out, but the CIP committee looked at it and understands. It's an increase of $43,000 if you adjust out the money, $103,000 plus for things like turnout gear and police cameras that we moved from general budget to CIP. So if you even that out, you adjust it properly, then the increase in appropriations that's being recommended is 43,000 plus. Number 14, this plan proposes increased appropriations of about $117,000 annually over the period of the plan, over 6 years, to catch up the recommended level of appropriations that are needed for proper maintenance and replacement of the town's capital assets. And Chet has used what I'll call best municipal management practices as a guideline as to how much should we be saving to pay for future acquisitions and repairs. So, and we have not been saving enough is the bottom was his assessment. And therefore this plan includes a catch up every year for the next 5 years. Water and sewer department is not included in this plan. We had pieces of it included in the past, but it's not included here at all. And as you all well know, I'm sure, it's funded by user fees and by state and federal grants. The ambulance is not included in this plan because it is funded by a similar plan called the EMS Enterprise Fund. They have money in that plan and that operation is expected to save money for the purchase of future ambulances. The town does contribute to that every year. We pay them, I don't know, $180 million, $200 million a year as a flat payment out of the general budget. And they're supposed to set aside X amount of that towards the purchase of new equipment. So therefore, we are not showing anything in the capital reserves plan.
You bet 180,000, right? Not 180 billion.
185,000.
I'm sorry, 180,000. If I misspoke. Sorry.
It's being recorded, so I just want to,
Yeah.
we get that correct, somebody might lose.
I didn't even, you're right. So we pay the EMS organization 180,000 per year or thereabouts. And again, their equipment is expected to come out of that money. And the last point here is that another aspect of improvement of capital improvement program and so on is that Chet will be submitting he's drafting several warrant articles for town meeting beyond the traditional articles. The traditional ones are will the voters approve putting $50,000 into a capital reserve fund for police cruisers. The answer, that's a traditional one, but beyond those kind, there's going to be one to add a new capital reserve fund for road reconstruction. We have not had that in the past. That would be a new capital reserve fund. B, move existing, along with that, with the warrant article will be needed to move any existing money that might be in the town's coffers for road reconstruction to that new fund. C, it's being proposed that we should authorize the select board as agents to expend for highway equipment. And as Chet says, is to allow the bid process a timing to work. Because by the time town meeting occurs in March, it's too late sometimes to be able to actually place an order with a supplier. So rather than waiting for the timing of town meetings, it's recommended that the select board should be allowed to expend money that the voters approved for appropriation to improve the timing. Maybe Chuck can elaborate on that in a couple of minutes when we're done. The next one is, there's a need to delete the existing police capital fund, which was created like over 15 years ago. And it wasn't really done right from a legal point of view for the lawyers to read it. So it needs to be, the new fund needs to be recreated and to properly fund police equipment. And lastly, there will be a warrant article to create and ratify prior appropriations to the government buildings capital reserve fund. That wasn't really done properly either. And what's needed in that is to identify how the money is to be used. For example, capital repairs as opposed to maintenance. So that's my overview of the plan. I hope you all had a chance to actually read the report. There's not time to do that here tonight. But with that, I'll open it up to questions.
The last two items. As I recall, anytime we create a warrant article, we pass it by the town attorney to take a look at the wording. So all of a sudden, he doesn't like what he approved 15 years ago.
He didn't approve these. They
Chet
didn't-
knows all about that.
They didn't, they were not run by, because actually the police one was written as a purchase of a police cruiser. That we're going to get the money from our newly created reserve fund, but there was no actual creation of the reserve fund. It wasn't a separate warrant article and it didn't have its sources and uses. It didn't have any of that in there. So this is to clarify the language so that we actually create, because in the one thing that's missing, and it's the same
No, I
thing in the
understand.
government buildings ones,
Right.
we didn't list the specifics of how it's to be used, which are a requirement of the RSA. So these are just cleanup housekeeping things.
I get that. I just was wondering why he didn't clean it up.
Well,
Different attorney
Well,
17
yeah,
years ago, you know?
It wasn't, well, the attorney we have now did not review these.
Okay,
So
that
I
would
know
be-
that.
that was the crux of my.
And the attorney we have now is reviewing these with Chuck.
Well, because we actually, there's actually a question from the budget, the CIP came from, can we modify this to include cameras that we have to buy every so many years for $80,000? And we went back and looked at the thing and I said, I don't see where I can. I sent it to the attorney, he goes, this wasn't even created.
Okay.
Per the rules.
Thank you.
So that's how that prescribed.
A lot of those accounts go back a long time.
Yeah, no,
Right,
no,
right,
we're
right,
just making sure that we can use them correctly.
Okay, no, I get
Because
that.
there's actually 4 warrant articles as a result of this, at least 3, possibly 4, which is we're deleting the account, we're creating the account. We're doing the original appropriation back in, and then we're buying a cruiser. So there's like four pieces of this process that are going through this.
So
Right.
along that same D, you're gonna create a new CR fund. Is that gonna become part of the town's fund, or is it still a separate entity?
No, it's a
under the
capital
police?
reserve.
It's a capital reserve fund.
Reserve fund.
Not a separate fund, but.
We've had one, but there's going to be
It's gonna,
an improved one.
it's gonna come into the general.
It
capital
doesn't move
fund.
anywhere. It
It will
stays
not,
where
it
it
will,
was.
they're all the reserve accounts are separate accounts that have to be expended from separately. They're not part of the actual general fund. The money comes from there, but that's not where it sits. And they actually earn interest and work separately.
And are managed by trustees of trust funds.
Right.
Okay.
So one of the things that that I wanted to just clarify as far as how this program works. It's designed to look at cost over life. And basically you can put in the life expectancy of each piece of equipment or road or any of these pieces. What the current cost is, we have inflation associated with it, and then it calculates over the course of the life, this is what it costs per road. Then you get a total, you know, if we use roads as an example, and it tells you what you should be appropriating for that area. So if I go to paved roads, we currently this past year, which is really a good thing, this is why we don't have a significant increase in the capital fund. $400,000 was appropriated for paving this year. In the paving fund, the correct paving appropriation, we've got $457,000. So the goal is to get to that over
How
this
many
5
miles?
years. Excuse me?
Oh, what's the distance? For 457, how many miles?
Nah,
of
I
paved?
gotta go find it.
I'll wait, go ahead.
Okay, I can go find it. I think it's 33 miles.
No. If you spend 457,000, is that a mile? Is that 2 miles? Is a mile and 3
How many
quarters?
miles?
That's
you get that
all the
money?
miles. The 457 is all the miles of the road, of the town. That's the entire road network, all the
It's
roads
about
added
30
together,
miles?
30 something miles, yeah, over 20 years.
Oh, it's over 30 miles. But, okay.
I'm just, this is what the numbers I was given as far as calculating it. We can update it. But
Okay.
one thing you wanna keep in mind is that the goal is to get these appropriations. So then I did an analysis of the overview for the capital budget. So our recommended appropriations should be about $1,460,000 per year for all of our capital equipment, roads, bridges, everything. This past year, 2024, we appropriated $876,000. So that's a difference of about $583,000. The one thing to keep in mind in this program is that it's not based on which project you're doing this year, how much you got to put in for the year. It's over time, because it's basically trying to level the funding as much as possible. So the look at the $583,000 was, okay, how do we get from where we are to that number? And we came up with a 5-year cycle, which amounts to about $116,000 a year.
5-year catch up.
5-year catch up. So if you add that to the expected appropriation, that would be about $993,000. The proposed appropriation for 2025 is $1,024,000. So we're really close in there. And this also looks at about $103,000 that's been budgeted annually in the operations budget. Those items are going to be purchased out of the capital plan. Now, this doesn't mean they have to go to the capital reserve plan, whether leases are over there or over here. The goal is, this is the amount of money we're putting towards these capital items, whether it's leasing, bonding, or anything else. We don't have to change it. So when Claude talked about the bond for the road, that $400,000 that we're putting in this year would include the bond payment in there, and we still would be able to do other roads. So there's no increased funding required for using these sources. And we do know that this past summer, the New Hampshire Bond Bank issued their 10-year notes at about 3.19%. So they're very low interest loans, and it makes sense because you can actually continue to work on other roads while you're making these payments. It only uses 240,000 of the 400. And every other year, we can still be paving other roads. So it allows us that ability to get caught up. And the goal would be, if we properly fund, that after 10 years and that bond is paid off, you would not have to borrow again.
Chet, that number works with, your proposed plan for when the other roads are gonna be, required to have maintenance done,
That's correct.
correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
you guys seen the
if
details?
anybody who wants to come and see how this thing works, I have no problem showing.
It's,
It is-
inside
it's-
the, his spreadsheet, there's a very detailed, each road is detailed with
Yeah.
when and what.
And they all have their own worksheets, and this
Yep.
is the sheet that was provided to you was just the overview from the 5 years. But there's all the background information that's in here that,
Well,
that
I'd
we
say
can
you
go-
want to back up under, when you discuss 13, is you have a backup sheet you put in the selectmen? Indicating where those numbers came from that were. in
The comparison sheet you were just looking at.
Oh,
Is that something you can give us, paper wise?
No.
So about this one, the
That's what he's
appropriation
asking about,
comparison, yeah,
yes, yes.
oh, absolutely.
Okay, can you send that out to us?
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah, no, that's no problem, because yeah, basically, and just so you know, it has my work way of doing it, so following it, that's why I want to explain it before I hand these things out. Because I do talk about the required appropriation, what the calculation is, the expected appropriation, what we're doing this year and what the difference is. And I think that's a key piece of this, so that we end up, looking at an apples and apples. So
Chet, while we're talking about roads, we're still talking about 83 miles of roads.
it's,
So I've got 44 paved from another report, an annual.
yeah, well, that
44
one was
paved
high.
and 39
We had
gravel.
to adjust that because things like River Road were put in there as a 3 or 4 mile road. It's actually only a half a mile
Yeah.
paved. So
I just
there
wanna
was some
make sure
things
the
that
apples
that
are
have
the
been
same.
corrected on that.
I think what she wants to know what the actual numbers.
Yep. I know we're supposed to be looking at capital improvement like for 525 culverts, 8 bridges, 83 miles of roads.
There's 54 miles of gravel road. So yes, it's in the 80 something mile range.
So we're now working 54 paved now,
54 gravel.
but last we.
And I got 35.1 right now on paved.
The last 12 months, at least 4 people that I'm aware of went out and actually filed it. And I was one of them. I know at least 2 people in the highway department did it, and I think they're on this administrator, or I think at least one did actually go out and drive them all.
But I plan to do that next summer, but.
And it came out to 30 when I did it, and I know one other person matched my number, so I think 30
paved.
paved.
And there's like 54, 55 gravel, so we're in that mid 80s.
Take a look at, so I got this number from the annual report that we share with everybody. That's where I got those numbers.
And I know where that came from, and nobody drove it.
I get it, but that's what I'm trying to say. So in the CIP, we're looking at that big number, whatever those numbers are, and they need to be adjusted each year, however it
Well,
goes, right?
technically, they should not be, after we get this right,
Should be static.
there's gonna be next summer, I would say, we're gonna find a stop spot.
Yeah.
Is what is our mileage,
Well,
What's
same
the
thing with culverts,
right?
for instance.
We're supposed to put in a report every year when they give us the classification. And it was never done during my term. And it would be nice to get the state to agree with whatever the reality is here.
That's correct, and
There is
I
a
got,
downside.
I haven't found that map yet, I will find it.
It's in the drawer. It's under-
Well, yeah, the problem is,
All right.
the drawer moved.
Okay, when it used to be in a drawer called roads and
Yeah.
classification.
Okay, okay, and I understand, but my 4th or 5th week I was here. Drawers
That's what it
moved,
is.
so we're getting there. So yes, the goal is this is the starting point. We tried to use as much of what was in the previous plan as, we took everything there and started, and then we started revising. And the goal is over this next year, before we get to next year's budget season, to really ratify and coordinate it with the state so that we're all on the same page. So that is the goal. But the primary thing to understand about this program is what we're trying to do is just say, we have to add $116,000 to our appropriation next year. That's what we're adding, and we're gonna review and see, are there things that have changed and other things we want to prioritize? But the appropriations are gonna stay basically the same once we have this final count, per se. So-
So just jump in one quick second. I think the other thing that everybody should be aware of is that we reinstituted a go forward inflation factor on costs.
And what is that factor?
Right now, we're using 3% just for general purposes. We have 3% in the plan. And it calculates through all pages as you'll see when the purchases happen a few years later, they're collectively 3% per year increase. And then the goal with that would be every 3 to 5 years, or if we make a current purchase and find out one of our numbers is off, we'll just do an adjustment in the program, because everything in here has, like, the replacement cost can be changed based on what we find, and then it'll start calculating from there. So it does have lot of variables that we can work with. We could change what years things happen in. But in general, you know, while we are short 583,000, it could be a lot worse. You know, I've seen a lot worse, and I think we're at $116,000 a year, or 10% over 5 years. Is what we're looking at getting back to where we can ultimately eliminate financing would be the goal, with the exception of certain pieces of equipment that it just doesn't make sense to own,
Like the roadside mower.
like the roadside mower. They take no tractor is really designed for those arms and mowers, and it just tears them up. And it's just like, that's not one you're gonna keep for 12 years. A grader, you wanna keep, you know, and that type of thing. So
If I may, back while you're on the lease idea, so I was looking at item 9 on the overview and item 4. Number 7, so we've changed our capital number to 10 grand, right?
Yeah.
And the lease, I'm gonna guess the police cameras, which looks like this year, there's a grant that's gonna help that out. But the police cameras are a collective group, not individual, so.
right, it's 120,000 for both body cameras and cruiser cameras, and we're getting 50,000 in a grant.
Yeah.
And then, you know, because the goal was to try and live within this 5-year plan, so we have a certain appropriation. Like, you know, would we prefer to just pay for it? Maybe, but that's another $70,000. And if we stick with this, you know, 5-year catch up, we get outside of that if we don't find some other ways to make this happen. So I think the goal was, especially this year with the challenges we have in the budget for the revenue side, you know, not having a massive increase on the capital side was a goal, but also getting our plan started and making sure that we're planning for the next 30 years. I mean, because the paving plan goes out 80 years, it's cost over life, and there's four segments of it. You know, you resurface, you mill and surface, you then reclaim, and then you rebuild. You know, so it's a four cycles.
And
So, if I may, Mark, excuse me, to your question. Yes, the amount of money there, the $50,000 grant goes towards a total cost for all the cameras, 2 kinds of cameras, right? Body cameras and cruiser cameras. They all get bought as a bundle. The total cost being about $120,000. The grant will pay for 50 of it. We're on the hook for the other 70, which we're spreading out in a lease.
Yeah.
Does that help?
I'm concerned about the plan, about moving forward. So
Yep.
what we're doing is we are not gonna be individualizing these purchases.
No.
It's gonna be a group.
And there's very
That's
good
why I
reason for
moved into
that. You
that.
don't buy one camera every year because then they're not all interoperable.
I get that.
As the technology changes, you gotta buy the whole bundle that all synchronizes and works together.
Got it.
That's pretty much what drives that.
That's what I was trying to see about moving it into the plan.
Yeah,
Structure.
and the other piece, the conversation about the ladder truck, you know, that was something that was brought up as a possibility. The fire department has gotten quotes for both kinds. It's like a $250,000 difference, whether it's just a straight pumper or a ladder. The new ladders, they call them quints, are actually built on a straight pumper's frame, and they can actually fit in the same kind of locations. And the question was, should they be upgraded? We use that as our worst case scenario for the planning project, but it doesn't technically change hardly at all the appropriation for the fire department. It's just basically what is the purchase we're gonna make when we're gonna make it.
Right.
The goal is, right now, we're trying to determine, because the purchase, we're hoping to do the purchase in 26. But the question is, do we need to put it as a warrant article this year so that it can actually be ordered, so we'd actually get it in 26? That's what we're trying to figure out right now. Because there is a lead time issue, but the plan is not to buy it till 26. I just don't know. Right now, the fire truck we ordered in April, I think it was April or May, was 2.5 year lead time, or a year and almost 2
I
years.
talked to the fire chief in Hanover, and they waited 2 years for their.
Yeah,
Right,
it's like,
right,
these things are
right.
such a lead time, but without authorization from the voters,
Can't buy it.
we can't buy it. And this really brings into the other part of the conversation that Claude mentioned, was the issue of allowing, especially with the highway capital equipment, allowing the select board to do the purchasing. Is the timing of these things are off. And then if you're gonna go through a formal bid process, before somebody will bid, they gotta know that you can buy it. You know, we can get budget numbers all day long, you know, and that's fine, but if you really want hard numbers, it's just the timing of some of these things are difficult. And we do have purchasing policies and we'll be updating those to make sure that, you know, we're following the right procedures. And I think, you know, that may be an option that we want to consider, because as far as I can tell, looking through the DRA's list of all of our funds and things like that, only three, I think, are expended by the voters. The rest are expended by the select board. So it's just a matter of keeping it in line, but also, you know, it's not like we're gonna go out and buy something without voter approval, but we have to go actually do the bidding, and we don't know the number the day we put it on the ballot, the final number, I should say. So that's where it's a difficulty, and the question is that something we want to entertain?
One other thing that I think everybody should be aware of on this, in the plan, the CIP plan, is we have no consideration for any future grants. So if we do get grants, that's gonna offset some of the cost.
Yeah.
And we also have no, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chen, on this. No consideration for any trade-in value for any of the equipment.
We have some in there for some pieces at this point, once we have those numbers, but usually it's like $20,000 or $30,000, and we do try to put that in there. Once we know it, but right now, for this first plan, we don't have any calculated in.
Right.
And if you look at the government buildings worksheet, you know, what you'll notice is we had, you know, a warrant to the government buildings fund of like 73,000. And then there's a grant, which would be revenue of $178,000, which is what was asked for. And then we have the expense down below of $195,000. So basically that 20,000 that the meeting house committee brought to the select board for what the match would be is in this plan. And then if we just got the L-chip grant, which is a good one, but we don't know about the Moose Plate yet. Well, if we don't get that grant, then it can come back to the select board to say, well, it's gonna, that 30 or something $1,000 we didn't get. Do we want to use it from this fund? I think that's the key is, you know, the goal is to have this plan. This is a place to say, we're gonna be to get us to a properly funded level. And then if we have things that vary a little bit in expense, it will adjust going forward and we see where our shortfalls are. So this will tell you, like, the nice thing is when, you know, a board asks you and says, well, what if we don't appropriate to this year? We really don't want to spend the money. It'll tell you which year you're going negative future, you know, and that's the whole benefit of the tool. That's the plan. So I think without a lot of pain, we can have Canaan get to its ideally funded level of capital and do it over 5 years. There's no way we're doing it in one.
But, so that extra money that we're just talking about now, it's for informational purposes, it's not what we're planning on. So recovering those funds, for instance,
Additional grants or trade-in values, yeah.
yeah, trade-in
I mean, yeah, for
values.
planning, because if I would look at the issue of, you know, we put in all the grants for the meeting house in here because we knew these were grants that were available and applied for, and we knew we had a shot, we had gotten to the next level. So from a planning perspective, we put them in there, but if we don't get them, you reduce that amount. And then we see, do we have to put this project off for a year? Those are the kind of questions.
Excuse me, two different things.
Okay.
That's regards, the answer that Chet just provided has to do with grants. The question you asked was about, I think, trade-ins.
What I'm getting at is.
You
this,
asked about both, but they're different.
I don't think that. Me as a taxpayer.
Right.
I'd rather know what's the worst case,
This is it.
and then if there's a gift,
There you go.
I'm gonna be pleased.
Well, that's what we've done. That's what we've done. In both cases, this is worst case.
That's what this is. This is the plan that
There you
says,
go.
if we were just straight going up and doing
Yeah.
this the way we've been doing it, this is what we need for money. And then, you know, it's one of those things that if you get a grant for renovation of a bridge that we were planning to put $100,000 in, well, then that's money you can actually put to something else this 1 year. You know, that just becomes the benefit that way, or we allow it to build in the fund because we know we have something 2 years from now we really would like to do.
Yeah.
So it just gives us a baseline and it gives us a plan that says, we know if we put this much money in, we can do all these projects.
You do show the grants under the highway, under the bridges.
Yes,
It wasn't just. the-
Yes. I'm sorry.
it's actually,
Under bridges,
I'm sorry, under
it
bridges.
shows
The $10
grants
million
in
for bridges.
26, 27.
yeah.
Correct. You are right,
2.9
Mike.
million and 6.9 million.
On
are
the
in there
bridges,
because
that
we
$10
have been-
million is reflected in the plan. That's
We
right.
have been awarded those.
Yeah, right, so that's,
Right. Oh,
that's
okay.
the differential, so he's putting in grants if he knows it's coming.
Right.
Or reasonably certain, I mean, some of these.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So good point. The point being that, as Sal was saying earlier, no future grants are being planned on that we don't know we have in this plan.
Yeah, I lived in Hanover when they had the first ladder, when they bought the first ladder truck, there was one house. And it had to do with a height issue. So I don't know if you have the inventory of the town's residences and the height issue, or if it was only the question you were asking was if it's only the school.
Yeah.
Well, the height issue is part of it, because the other piece that was mentioned, there's reach in a couple of things that
Reach.
that apply, that it applies to, so. There was a couple of instances that were brought up. I am fairly confident that that's not the direction we're gonna go at this point. And that will just modify what the expense in the lease version, but the appropriation stays relatively the same.
Got a whole batch of questions, but just the one on the fire first. You said the differential for the ladder truck was how much?
I think it's like 250,000.
And do you have an idea how many calls we've had in the last 4 years? That need a, we call out now, so we get Hanover 11 and so.
It's an interesting, because Killington, where I'm from, they had, when they built the Grand, they had the resort paid about half of that first tower truck.
Good luck. I,
Oh, no, I wasn't going there,
I know.
but my point is, we had a tower truck, when we went to replace it, they found this Quint. And they've actually found, because of its maneuverability and the reach and stuff, they're using it on like 70% of their calls. It's amazing.
and that may be true.
Right.
The only concern I have is there aren't a whole lot of ladder trucks throughout the state of New Hampshire
Oh.
versus the number of
Yeah,
times.
I don't think we're gonna be going there. I think this was all a
Okay,
planning
and
session.
there, it's not just the issue of the cost.
Right,
It's the level of maintenance and the lifespan because it has to be certified frequently. And it gets to be difficult certifying a ladder truck.
yeah, ladders get it certified each year.
So my point.
Yeah,
So I'd like to see before we vote yes or no on that one, I'd really like to see what the actual demand is. And they should have it. They call it out or they don't call it out when they need it.
Right.
And then the question is exactly what's the risk factor? If, I know it takes another 15 to 20 minutes to get a truck here, but how important is that in these buildings? And I don't know, because a lot of them have sprinklers in them, so I just don't know what the risk factor is.
yeah, this was a wish list item, and I think we're gonna be buying a regular pumper. It will change this, and it will not affect the appropriation, because that's the life cycle of the whole department.
The comment I would make on that is, if we're gonna need a warrant article this March, we need to tell the voters exactly what we're buying. We
Correct.
can't put a warrant article for a ladder and then turn around and buy something different.
I expect to know.
So
in the
we have
next
to
2
nail
weeks.
that down soon.
When we come back on the 19th, I can pretty much tell you what it'll be.
So I know that about a year ago, a fire department member brought it up that they wanted a ladder truck. And so I spoke with the fire chief at the time, it's not the fire chief anymore. And he said, that's not a fire department wish, that was a member wanting that. We probably don't have room for it in here. They probably really don't need it. It's not something I personally would be on board with, and especially right now when the department is in so much flux and we don't have a permanent fire chief. I mean, regardless of if we make that position, if it passes to be full-time or not, Bill Bellion is not staying indefinitely. So I would like personally to see a fire chief in there and see what their recommendation is. But yeah, I agree with you, Mike. Shockingly, I agree with you.
Hey, always one time. I just have strong reservations about the ladder truck.
I'm with you. I just, like, they have to prove their point, and my thing is, I think it's gonna be a straight pumper to replace the 98, and I think we will, in order to get it in 26, we may have to put it on the ballot, so we order it this year.
And the other issue is Cardigan Mountain, I don't remember the exact number, but I know it's in. I know that they are the largest taxpayer in the town of Canaan, by far,
Okay.
okay? So it's not like they pay a payment on lieu of taxes, they actually pay a boatload of taxes.
Oh, really? Oh.
So it's gonna be a tough sell.
Isn't that just on the homes that they own though? It's
No,
not
it's
at
on the
school?
land, it's on the homes that they own, anything that is not directly related to instruction. So, the cafeteria, dining hall, no, it's taxed. So you
The
got,
hockey arena?
the hockey arena is part of sports and that counts.
Oh,
Anything that's directed to student development is
Okay.
okay. Some of the homes are taxed, so the homes that, and there's a tricky rule in the state rules about it. If there is a faculty member in a home, or even a couple in a home, and they've got at least 1 or 2 kids that they supervise as whatever, that counts as tax exempt.
Huh.
But if they're living just in the home, no, it's taxable. And all the land is, and even though they got a lot of it incurring use, they got a lot that's not incurring use too, so. That land that's not developed for educational purposes and hiking is not counted. That's all gets taxed, so if you look at all these, it's in the MS1 and you can look at it, you can see how much it is. But it's either it's assessed at 14 million or the taxes, I don't think the tax is 14 million. But it's a
It'd be
huge
nice if
amount
we
of
were
money.
getting 14.
What is it?
It would be nice if we were getting the 14 million.
I just don't remember, but I know 14 million is the number that comes to
Yeah.
mind, but I think that's the assessed
The
valuation.
assessed value.
That would be the assessed valuation, right?
Yeah, but there's only a few houses kicking around that hit that.
They're the largest employer too.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't have anything else on fire. I do have other questions though, but I wanted to wait until everybody else asked.
I have a question, if I heard it correctly. You want to clean up some of the warrant articles,
Mhm.
so you're gonna dissolve it and then
That's only one that's gone to that level.
Okay, just to dissolve it and then reconstruct it.
The police one is at that level.
What happened, I'm playing devil's advocate, but maybe I don't understand. The voters dissolve it, but then the voters also don't create a new one.
Well, the reality is. Then.
What if they did that, 2 different warrant articles?
The issue is, then it just becomes part of
The general.
the general fund. We have to buy things out of the general fund. And most of, except for when we do the creation of the new warrant article, that's where it'd be the bulk of money. We would not be buying a cruiser next year if that happened.
Could you word it so that you dissolve it and create it all in the same?
Well, that's what I gotta,
wording?
that's what I'm working on right now with the attorney. is to
That would
say
be the
how
way
we
to go if
about
we can
that.
do
Yeah,
it.
it would absolutely be the way to go. The
Same.
goal is to try and merge some of these. Right now I have 39 warrant articles, because I have 39 things we're trying to fix.
Right.
And then we gotta merge them.
Okay.
There might be a danger on that,
Yeah.
since there was a war around here about 15 years ago. About agents to expend, and it went over 2 years, I think, or 3 years before the voters decided what they wanted to do. And you're right, most of them are up to the voters, not up to the Board of Selectmen. So the fear I would have is, okay, if you really need to change that account, change the account. But keep the agents to expend as a separate warrant article if you
Right.
can. Otherwise, people may vote down the restructure of an organization just because it says selectmen or agents to expend.
I think that's right, yeah. I
Well,
would agree with that, Mike.
Yeah, and we'll have those, that's the part we'll figure out through this process.
Yep.
But yeah, that's the details of what
Yep.
we're dealing with, so.
Okay, other questions?
Yeah, I got a bunch unless somebody else is gonna. All right, I wanna go through your thing here.
All right.
first. So in number 7, you say that they used to be in the police department, we're breaking up for the police department. There's a bunch of them like that, not just in the police department, but for instance, there's culverts, you got culverts in here, you got culverts over on the other side as well. Are you gonna continue to do it both ways? In other words, have it in the capital reserve and then also have it in the general fund?
Oh, no, one
Actually,
or the other.
The reason the things are in both this year, and you'll see a bunch of those. And the paving is another example, is because we don't have the authorization to put, the expend for those items outside of it. The goal is to just, well, the warrant article will be. Can we just move that over once we do the correction? We just want to move that money from the fund, so there's no tax increase. The goal is to get them all aligned correctly, but like paving is still in the operations budget because we
Yeah.
don't have a reserve fund. It's going over there. It's not adding any money to it. We're asking to move it from the general fund to the reserve fund.
So that means for those people that are still sitting on this committee a year from now. That they ought to be looking at the operating budget then to see, otherwise we've got like 400,000 in the operating budget for paving. And then over here, we've got another whatever for paving over here.
Well, when the warrant article will read that we're just gonna take the existing 400,000 in the operating budget to move it over.
Put it in that
And,
fund.
and then there will be no impact on the taxes.
And I don't remember, did Sean clearly say we can do that?
We could do that part. The question was the leasing one. That's what I'm trying to get worked out.
No, I was more worried about, because in the past when we tried, and I asked him, and I thought he said, yeah, you can do it. But I'm still curious about, I'll still probably make a phone call.
I mean, because the issue is what we don't want to end up doing, and it's the same point you're making. Is if they decide to turn down the warrant article to create the reserve fund, we still have to have the money in there for the paving and to do the work we're gonna do. So we're putting it over here until we get permission to move it over. So,
And the only way that worked in the past was. Initial appropriations contained in the operating budget is a line that was in the warrant.
correct.
So is that your intent to do
Yes.
that? Okay, well, that gets rid of a bunch of.
Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna still work on your list, Claude.
Yep.
Okay,
Did you want to say something on that point?
No, okay.
Go ahead.
Please.
on the bond issue for the 1.6 for the 3 paved roads. In 22, it got screwed up with Silvio County funding with Fish and Wildlife Federal. Funding Switch Road and River Road. Those funds are still available, and you know, when do they go away?
They said that they never finalized the award. We have to reapply in April, and it only counts for the gravel portion, is what I was told by the guy that I have connections with.
Okay, because he clearly said that the paving was included.
Well, and this falls into the conversation of, that's a blessing, because we're gonna reapply in April. And if they allow us to go, because he said they have to work on the scope, because I think their monies have
But
shrunk.
then you've got an appropriation of $1.6 million that you don't necessarily have to use,
Well,
but you can use it anytime.
what do you mean?
Okay, if the voters say, yeah, spend $1.6 million, and we want to do River Road and Switch Road. And typically what happens is that the Fish and Wildlife, US Fish and Wildlife. Pays for 80%, we have to pay for 20%, so it's the same as everything else.
Right.
With the state. If they did include the pay, they designated Switch Road as the entryway for Black Pond and all the conservation lands. And they designated River Road as the entryway for it. So they were willing to rebuild River Road from the bridge up and into Clark Pond, which is a fairly interesting job. And then they were willing to pave all the south end of River Road from the bridge down and pave River Road. And the amount at that point was $1 million or $1.1 million. And that was when ARPA was involved, so the whole cost is $1.1 million. But it also means that, and that's been going on for years, this grant program is every year. And it just happened that particular year was with ARPA funds. So if the application actually goes in and goes in correctly, then you might be able to save $1 million.
Okay, and I understand what you're saying, and that's part of, we don't know that we have a grant if we get one, because the warrant article will always read not to exceed 1.6 million, so if I only need 600,000, I only need 600,000.
So the problem for me is if we authorize $1.6 million.
Yeah.
And a source of funds comes to take over $500 million, say 800,000. Then that doesn't change the nature of the authorization, so you still have another 800,000 you could spend. If in fact the warrant article were to say. Appropriate the sum of $1.6 million, to be reduced by any grant funding available for the project, I'd be okay with it.
Oh, that's fine. I have no issue with that.
I'm just
I
saying
just-
that I
I'm
don't
not
wanna
antici-
authorize another 800,000 just for the help.
Right, no, I agree with you, but just so you know, the project that's estimated in here is about 2 million.
Probably is.
Okay, and we have the appropriation of the 400,000 going in there to take off some of that. That amount of the money, because part of the problem is Goose Pond Road is gonna be over 1 million by itself.
Goose Pond's gonna be, you're talking Upper Goose Pond.
Yes, Goose Pond, all the drainage has to be replaced and then reground and paved and yada, 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 so. The fact of the matter is to be reduced by any grant funds, that's absolutely what the language should say.
And that's one of the issues about about the highway budget, where there's a lot of money put in for culverts. There's a lot of money still in culverts in the general fund.
Right.
I assume the answer is the same.
Yes,
You're
they're
gonna get
moving
the-
over.
Okay. Everything is, are all the leases currently 7 years?
No.
There's,
Wait a minute.
well, the lease that was approved are the ones in the plan you talk about?
No, let's start with the ones.
That
we
was
currently
the
have.
one we currently have is a 5-year, I believe. It's a 7-year lease. There's 2 of them. It got split into 2 because 2 pieces of equipment were available and the other one will start this spring. But it's 7 years for both of
So the
those.
grader is 7
Greater 7,
and the truck, what was the other?
7.
Not truck. it was-
Backhoe.
There's 2 trucks, the truck, yeah, the backhoe and the grader are currently 7.
All right, so the question, this is not in your report, but it's over on your part of the equation. Do we really think our grader is only expected to last 7 years?
That is a $1 buyout lease. We own it at the end.
And how does that impact the CIP committee? Is your model, do you show that we're gonna keep paying that amount out at the end of?
Oh, no,
That
well,
one,
these payments stop at the end of the 7 years, and then there are no costs on that line
Okay,
until 20 years from now, when we
12
show
or
the purchase
15, it
price of a
wasn't
new
20.
one.
so this year is year 1 for that?
yes,
Yes.
So 6 years out, which is what your cycle is for
Yep.
this report, it should stop after your report.
that's
You can
correct.
look at it,
So that's a
absolutely.
reminder to, again, whoever's left on the budget committee to look at it, because if that just keeps going on with another rollout of another 7-year lease for another grader,
There,
No.
that's crazy.
graders, loaders and backhoes are not gonna be tied to that 7 years.
Nor should fire trucks.
And fire trucks are, I think they're all 20.
They're 20s, and that's realistic and for a couple of reasons. One is the
Right.
bodies are different material than a
And
normal
the use
truck.
is a lot less.
Cause in here, we have them all, it's cause I don't know, let's see. Yeah, the dump trucks are 8 years. The loaders 12. The graders 12 right now in the plan. We have other things. That go out to 15 and 25 years. The fire trucks currently are 20. 2020, one of them. The Chevy 1-ton, and that's only a 15. But everything else is 20. All the real fire trucks are 15s. I mean 20s.
And the ambulance isn't really in this, but the ambulance usually is either 15 or 20. Depending.
Well, what we did is we still have a plan for their equipment. It's actually just a different worksheet.
What do they have it on the ambulance?
Where'd it go? They're at 15.
Okay.
And when something you just said, Mike, just, I'm looking at the details behind the report you all have. And I'm looking at those, for example, the grader, all right? You asked a specific question, I can tell you right now. The grader has lease payments of $51,652, starting this year until 2031, and then stops. And I'm looking at the numbers in the spreadsheet.
Okay, that's good. It's just like. Just. trying
And
to-
basically, every piece of equipment, when you go into the worksheet portion, you can say finance yes or no and length of financing, and then it just puts it in there, but we don't have anything planned for financing out there. We hope not to have to continue to do that.
And what you'll also see, I guess, is, correct me if I'm wrong, Claude, but on the grader, for instance. At how many years was it? 12?
Way out.
So you get basically 4 or 5 years. of-
We got 1, 2, 3,
There's-
4, 5 years
And
of no
that's-
cost.
And then there is an actual
Yeah.
number that buys a new grader. at
Right,
that point in time.
correct,
Is that
right.
Wait a minute,
So-
that number starts in 6?
Excuse me?
does that say it's going to be bought in year 6?
No.
No,
No,
It's
because
just a
fund- the
number
funding,
for
the
planning.
funding ends at year 6, and then we're building up cash
Okay.
going forward.
That's fine. And then the last one for you, Claude, on your sheet. You said that water and sewer isn't included in here. Is there in your software a plan for water and sewer?
We didn't have one coming in, and we're putting one together. Actually, the CIP group talked about starting again right after we get this budget done, with having another meeting and start to put the water to sewer plan together related to the replacements that we're doing, the work that has to be done that's not part of the grants. There's a couple of smaller projects that we have to look at, and having a long-term plan for that. We are in the process, I could call it.
Okay, just 2 comments about it. The first one is the state requires it.
I know.
So that's gotta be done.
Yep.
And the other problem is if you go to rural state or Granite State Rural, whatever, water and sewer. Unless it's changed in the last 3 years, and it did change to some extent with ARPA money. But there is no reliable plan for replacement of infrastructure for water and sewer, period. And there hasn't been for at least 8-10 years. So whenever the CIP committee starts looking at water and sewer, or when you put it into the plan, the recommendation that we worked out with Granite State Rural Water for all of the towns about 8 years ago was to say, okay, anything that's wear items, we put into a capital reserve plan. So that means any motors, any equipment like that, we put into a capital reserve plan. On elevated tanks, on water tanks, there's always an inspection program, but then beyond the inspection program, put it on the useful life of what the tank is. And we did not put in ever in any of the planning that was done here, anything for the rapid infiltration beds, because it's not the same type of wear item. It can be, but it's not usually considered that as a wear item. We did only part of the piping. And it was only the part that was the most aggressively worn. Just, if you got pipes that we're replacing now that are 120 years old, they ought to last for at least 20 or 30 years when we put them. So that's the only comments about that piece. And if I could, unless somebody wants to take over, I got a bunch on these. Can I go through those?
What are we talking about?
Do you mean outside of CIP?
No, it's your spreadsheet.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay, so some of you already answered, like the term is 7 years and everything, right? I think I wrote that down. And 3% is the inflationary rate in the model.
And for any financing, the equipment financing, I used 5%, and for the bonding, it was 3.19.
And we'll all be pleasantly or unpleasantly surprised if inflation goes rampant with tariffs and we have to pay double.
Well, yeah, no, that's a
Who
whole
knows?
other animal. Well, the good thing is most of these, actually, that's wrong.
Hey, never mind.
It's all electronic
No
coming
comment.
from overseas.
What's next?
What, could we in the future put the acquisition years?
The original acquisition year?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes, we
sure.
used
Well,
to.
which chart are you looking at? Mike?
I'm looking at table 4.
Table 4.
Okay,
Let
I
me look
can
there.
actually send you.
I was just saying for.
But I could get it into the table
Well,
next
what
year,
I'm
yeah.
saying is,
yeah.
When you go to the equipment worksheet.
Yeah.
Every piece of equipment's purchase year is listed.
Except
In
that
there,
the
but-
voters are only gonna see
The
that.
voters
Right,
don't go
they
in
don't
the
get to see
equipment
this,
worksheet.
right.
What he's saying is, the voters will see this. We could easily add that, yes.
Let me see what I have over here.
We'll
No.
hold
yeah,
on. a minute.
recommended
Let
year.
me write that down so that
Yeah.
we're gonna start meeting late winter to work on next year's plan to include some improvements like water and sewer and whatever. So let me put that down. We need to move acquisition year.
It makes a big difference when you know that
Yeah.
you're using a vehicle from 1998.
Yeah,
Right.
agreed. I understand. Keep going, Mike. What's next?
All that data is available if you want to see it.
Going home, so what's up?
But I'm a voter and I don't. if
I know, I'm not saying we
I'm
shouldn't, I'm saying,
just gonna be upset.
I hear
But
you.
when I see it's 30 years old, it's like, oh.
That's a good argument to replace it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well,
Now
actually,
I
for
get
the,
it.
in the short term for this, like this year, if we decide to put the warrant article this year, we can list it. It's a 1998. Put the year of the replacement vehicle.
Okay, what's next, Mike?
The next one is, I had asked already about the culverts and why they're in both spots. I got an answer. And, same thing as on the roads. I got my answers on that. I really don't have anything else.
Anyone else?
Thank you, Claude. Good job.
Thanks, Claude. You're welcome.
Well, it was a good job in the presentation, but it was a real good job in putting it all together. All the committee members.
But that was a group effort. so
Yeah, no
we-
kidding.
Just give Claude credit.
No, it went very well. It went very well.
I'm the one that kept the square business.
So Chet and Carrie Ann on the summary of revisions, is there anything you guys want to talk about in particular? On that, or bring up?
No, we just basically put all of our points there. We just wanted to draw everyone's attention to the full-time highway spot. Because the tax collector, the budget committee had asked to add a full-time position to the tax collector department. So with, the highway department, there was a part-time position that had way back in the past been a full-time position. And we were wondering if that would also be able to be a full-time position in the operating budget.
So basically, it's a 75% position right now, plus benefits. And do we put that rate in there, or do we need, to put it as a warrant article? I mean, we're just converting it. Our part-time driver has limits on his hours, has not been here all that much, and he's probably triple retired. So we need to fill that position.
You already know what's gonna happen,
Yes.
so. It's gonna be difficult. I liked your budget last week, but the last week.
Well, the only issue was the revenue is where the big issue is.
Yeah, but that, it was self-inflicted. I mean, it was 1 year. I went back and looked, and the only year that was done on the delinquent taxes was last
Okay. Well,
But I
the
can-
reality is, what we, as we discovered. The one error on the summary sheet. We have already started talking about, okay, where are we going, how are we going to address this? And getting this done. I would personally believe that. The town clerk's position is necessary. The fire chief being as a warrant, I think is a necessary issue because that's an operational issue and getting that function done. And the highway truck driver, I think, is necessary. Building and maintenance is gonna have to wait a year just because. This is gonna be a tight year because of the revenue issue. And then we're looking at some other revenues that we're gonna tighten up. And then there's some potential revenue sources we need to discuss. So that's, basically, we gotta make up about $500,000 in revenue, boss.
But again, go back to what you proposed over, this is the last revenue sheet we got. And you had already wiped out the redemptions.
Right.
So in the document you gave us at the last meeting about income and expense. Was that number correct or incorrect in terms of the revenue? In other words, was it based on this?
Yes. It was actually a summary formula, break,
Okay.
not a,
So I was pleased, look, I will never support, I will not vote in favor, I will not sign anything if it's a 25%.
correct.
And haven't exactly made it. I'm not trying to disguise that or sugarcoat it. On the other hand, you came in at 9.25 or 9, whatever, it was 9.5. I was impressed about that. I was impressed that the calculation from my perspective was done correctly. And the problem is that I have 160,000 in this budget here. That I want to talk about before we're done. It's in 7 different lines. And I assume we're not going to do that tonight, but I want to try to get through those 7 lines, and I'll tell you in advance what they are. And what the issues are. So I don't know. I felt pretty good when I looked at yours because they said, well, this is all doable. It can come in at like a 7 or 8% increase. And while I think that will harm people in mobile homes, I don't, you know, you gotta go up. I mean, there is inflation, there's no question about it. So it looked good to me, but I don't know what the impact is yet on your CIP.
The,
So,
the CIP is included in what
I
you
saw.
read. So there isn't any new expense. The issue is all on the revenue side. The total expenditure increase is $209,000 or about 3.5%. But if you take out the delinquent tax revenue and we don't have,
So let's get into that, because we didn't go over revenues.
no.
So
Yeah.
what are you
When-
talking about?
yeah. let's-
Well,
let's
there
talk
was,
about
there was two line items last year in the budget. One was using the $400,000 in undesignated fund balance. And
From the
200,
warrant articles, right?
no, this was in the budget.
For capital
If you-
reserves.
Oh, that's what I meant. Yeah, yeah.
So, and then
If you
two,
look at the first page, the account 01319010 redemptions. In the year 2022, there was 243,000 booked as revenue there. And then last year, when we were told to level fund all the revenue budget. That's why we're not doing the redemption in 2025. Because now it's booked as a receivable, not as revenue.
But you misrepresent part of that, not on purpose, okay? In the budget that went to the voters, I checked it this afternoon again, just to be sure, they'll look at the 22 town report, 23 town report. If you wanna look at the 21 town report, when we put the revenue budget out to the voters, we showed it as 0. Okay? Yes, we accounted for the revenue from a bookkeeping side. But we never ever put that into the budget of what we were proposing for revenue. Because of the issues that you've identified, it has to balance out against the new delinquents.
and when you talk about the 243,000 in redemptions and the $400,000 that was undesignated fund balance, that's $650,000 worth of revenue we have to make up. That's where this difficulty is coming.
And I saw that and I was very concerned, the last meeting I obviously was very concerned about it. I will say that after I went through in detail what you've done, I wasn't as concerned anymore. I shared it with the 3 members of the budget committee that, you know, okay, it's within reason. But the problem for me again is to, if I could, what, you wanna go through the revenue budget?
Yeah.
Or we just, I have 3 questions on the revenue budget. Go ahead.
Yeah, the report that I talked about at the last meeting, I provided 2022,
Is it 1120? That's the one, right?
Yes.
yes. Yeah, 1120.
Yeah.
So we have the historical actuals for 2022, 2023, and then the 2024 budgeted. The 2024 actual as of the date of the report that changes regularly. And then you'll see the column for the 2025 estimated. So I tried to look back through the actuals and then do the best estimate for 2025. The largest fluctuation is the very last one in the general fund, the transfers from the trust fund and the capital reserve. It's gonna look a whole lot different because in 2024, this year, we had all the warrant articles for the revolving fund paying for the ambulance and the fire truck coming out of the capital reserve. That all ends up showing up as a transfer from outside funds. So in 2025, we're not buying as much stuff. So there's about $100,000 difference there. But the majority of the revenue is the 650,000 from not spending fund balance and then the redemption.
And basically, what we're looking at, and actually the guidance we would want from the budget committee. You know, what I've been looking at is if you look at where we are and what we're trying to correct this year, because this will be a one-time issue correcting the revenue side of it. Is, you know, what if we were to put a number to an increase? I mean, I'm in the 12 to 15%, I think we can get to without too much trouble. But it's, if it need, you know, we need to know if that's gonna be something that's acceptable, or are we gonna have to go somewhere else? Cause then we're starting some ugliness in the budget.
Do you have any more presentation or can I ask questions?
Last question.
Okay. I'll take the last one last, if it's okay. I just want to run down through from the front to the back. I know there's litigation going on Goose Pond, on the, land use change tax. I'm queasy about you. I see you've got 214,000, 215,000 is what it says in here that you actually got in land use taxes. This is on page 1 of 6. It's up at the top.
Mhm.
And you got 107 next year. And so my question to you is, and I hope that the budget committee looks at this issue before we get done. I personally would not put 107,000 into 2025 if you're litigating.
That doesn't count any of those. Because
So
we
you
have,
think you're gonna get 107,000 next year
Well,
with some?
we looked at some averaging, but we also, I have to go back and I'll bring back the specifics next time.
Okay,
Because there was a bunch of current ones coming out of current use and things of that nature. That are going, but haven't been billed and won't be till April 1st. So I will get that document for you.
if it has, you know what the issues are, I assume you
Yes.
know what the issues are on Goose Pond. So. It's easy to say, okay, it's current use if you put up a single house on a single lot, you're pulling the lot up. You got some large. Endeavors that are going on
Mhm.
or potentially going on, but they're still in current use, you know, and I can think of 2 or 3 off the top of my head. That are hundreds of acres is still in current use. And if. I don't know what's going on now, and I don't really want to know what's going on now, but. If we overstate the value. The new value of the property after development. And it goes to litigation other than Goose Pond, then we're in trouble. So again. Personally, I would say go with like $40,000 to $50,000 in that line rather than 100,000.
Okay.
And that's just a comment,
Mhm.
and you know,
I gotta go back and look, because I know, we know there's a bunch of new ones that are coming up that they were talking about. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah, what I don't want to do is I don't want to overstate income either, because if you
Correct.
don't get it, then you're gonna tax us on it when it comes time to the.
Well,
Tax
my,
rate,
my hope
so-
is we don't have to go there.
Okay. Page 3, you got the breakout for Orange for fire department. Have we collected from Dorchester? Because as far as I knew, it was 3 years behind.
Dorchester's check just got deposited this week. So I haven't gotten the numbers from our treasurer yet, and it's not showing on the report. but
So-
they did pay.
And I've never understood this. It was happening with my time too, but you got fire department funds from Orange. You don't have the same thing for Dorchester. It's a separate account.
All this stuff was in the department miscellaneous in that line, so now I'm just starting to break out. And make the description so we can tell what it is.
Well, I would ask you to contemplate putting a line in the same thing when it says fire department funds from Orange. Put it in for Dorchester, because it gets lost. It got lost with 3 different town administrators. And it's not a good deal.
What was the check? How much was the check?
29,000.
They don't pay that much every year.
Darn.
They pay that over 4 years.
Oh, I see. I
Well,
see.
and actually,
They pay their portion of fire and EMS, so that check will get split.
I was just talking to somebody that was talking about some of the issues that these towns are having with these. I forget who it was. But, was it?
Not me.
No, okay. But, because there's an issue where I think. Is it Dorchester? We cover half of the ambulance?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Dorchester is they're actually getting shut off by the town that was covering the other half, and they were coming in to ask, oh, it was Tom. That I was talking to. And looking at how those things work, and, you know, one of the things that we're gonna have to look at is all of these fee structures and everything else, so. You know, because people are gonna be coming and asking for more coverage. And from what I understand, and I know Carrie Ann did some corrections last year, at least got our operations budget done by percentage of calls. But we haven't ever put like the total cost of a department, which would include our capital appropriations, I think. So we have to start looking at what is it really costing us to provide service? Don't know.
Actually, we did. But doesn't make a difference.
Okay.
Whenever you look at that, my suggestion is also talk to John.
Yep.
Because we have never followed the rule of having those agreements. There were formal agreements for Orange. Well, all three, at one point, there was one for Grafton, one for Orange, and one for Dorchester. Grafton, disappeared. But Orange and Dorchester were left. So the reason that they got shut up by the other towns is because they did the same thing to the other towns as they did to us. And
Yeah.
so it would be good to show that going forward.
Right.
And the old formulas were actually created almost 18 years ago. And it was on a spreadsheet, which you probably have never seen, but there was a spreadsheet with math formulas in it. So it was assigned by population and by assessed valuation. So there was a formula built to do all that. And there was a split of 50-50 arbitrarily on Dorchester. So whatever the rate came to, and you put it into the formula, the 50%, and it sounds like you've already changed it, that's fine. But that did have a capital element, so it had operating costs, capital, from the capital reserves, all the monies that were going to the fire department, we assessed it year over year into that formula. And 15,000 a year for management. That had nothing to do with the fire department, just went to the general.
Yep. Okay.
So that was it, and I can't think I have. I think that was it.
I got one other question that I'll probably get shot for when I get back to my office and somebody upstairs finds out what I'm asking. Is when the library came in to do their presentation and they showed their expense, and I want to say it was like $236,000 for their budget. And then there was a line item for revenues that they take in every year and paid from other towns. Based on the ask and based on the last couple of years, the town has always put in the entire amount of their budget expense. And that revenue is not offsetting anything in taxes. It's actually money just going into a reserve account. And didn't know how the board views that.
I'll give you what happened on that, because it wasn't always that way. About 7 years ago, there's an association of librarians or libraries, in the state of New Hampshire. And somebody at the AG, at the DRA said, well, you gotta have gross budget. You can't just ignore that part of the budget. Okay, it's like water and sewer, it doesn't come out of the general fund, but it's in the town report.
Right.
So there was a discussion with Amy and the library trustees, how to deal with it, and Cindy Neely was part of that. And in order to achieve what the state was requiring us to do, we showed in the expense side, the full library budget. And on the revenue side, the excess revenues that were used against. And the only thing that was not included in that excess revenues was grants that weren't anticipated.
Right.
Okay, and it was running like $15,000 to $20,000 at that time. I don't know what it is now.
Have any, the library's revenue goes into its own library's checking
Yeah,
account.
but there's supposed to be a transfer. It was done as a journal entry. To move money from the library account to the general fund. Because of this gross budget. Concept number one, everything you spend has to be approved by the voters.
Yeah, but we wouldn't do a journal entry transferring money.
I don't care, you do a
The
bookkeeping.
library doesn't actually cut a check to put in our checking account.
I don't care how that part gets done. All I'm telling you is that there's a rule about gross budget. So you have to show the total expenditures in the budget somehow. Okay, and then in order to compensate back to the town against that gross amount, you have to do some type of an entry, whether it's a check, whatever you want to do. You show revenue, because it used to be that the money actually, as soon as the budget was voted, the money went the whole amount. So if it's $200,000, it went $200,000 from this account to this account. And then before the end of the fiscal year, you have to move the money back represent the non-tax revenue back into the general fund as an offset.
Okay.
If you don't wanna do it, it's up to you. I'm just telling you what we were told.
Well, and that would help, because we don't have anything on the revenue side attached to that right now, so that's what we have to look at.
Right.
So, okay. That
And
was.
here's the other problem, not that you raised the issue. Guess what we don't do?
What is that?
We show the CEMS budget. But we don't talk about it, and we don't do any different than on the CEMS budget, the ambulance. As we do in the library, so we show the separate library budget, we show the separate CEMS budget. But we don't put $400,000 into the general fund for the CEMS budget, whereas we do put in the $185,000 for the library, $200,000 for the library. So it's inconsistent on that, and the only difference between the two is CEMS is an enterprise fund. The library is a protected fund. It's not the same as an enterprise fund. So that's the distinction we use. I don't know what it's legal.
These are all things we wanna look at, and as we change the RSA, if the voters approve moving to the fire chief. And how that looks when one entity is covering the whole process, how we're going to address that. And what will it look like going in the future? So these are things that we're gonna have to work through.
And the final one that you asked about was the full-time personnel. And nobody else has weighed in on it. I think that the intent was always to do a full-time chief.
Yeah.
It was the politics of doing a full-time chief.
Right.
Because the town historically did not want to do a full-time chief, so we did as close to we could get to have a insufficiently funded.
I think you can.
Full-time chief with all these
I think you
types of
can.
money put together.
Right.
If I can.
So, I think that they're probably willing to go with a full-time chief now. I hope so, because they've got the, and you can point to it, you've been basically funding it.
Yeah.
For 2 or 3 years.
Right, so I mean, I think it's a good thing. I think we wanna leave the town clerk piece in the budget, and I think we should be putting going from a 3/4 person to a full person on the highway budget. We should put that in the budget, not do it as a warrant article.
So
But-
right now. You have the fire chief in the budget we've been looking
Correct.
at. Truck driver is or is not in the budget now.
Part of it is part-time.
Okay. So can we get a statement of how much, are you gonna show us on the next round?
Yes.
What
I
that's.
mean,
gonna-
I think what we'll do is we'll put it in there and then we'll have the conversation.
All
Yeah,
right,
the
so,
one I just talked out today has it as a warrant article. You'll see the
Right.
3 warrant articles for the fire chief, maintenance person and highway person. At the very end.
So it's calculated in the overall, but it's not, we took it out of the one and put it in the other.
okay, and then the last is almost as bad as you're getting you in trouble with your questions. I'm gonna share that and see if I can get myself in trouble. So. It's a lot of new manpower in 1 year. To go to 3 full-time positions. Yes, it's reduced by the fact they're part-time positions. And yes, it's reduced by the fact that there's no fire chief. I don't think I personally think it's okay. Okay. The only thing that I could consider as an offset is not going to a full-time on the administrative assistant.
Okay.
But I think you need the administrative assistant, so.
I mean, it's needed overall at this point, but at the very least, we want Ann to go home once in a while.
And that's just my personal opinion, I not, other people may view it differently.
My opinion is that not manpower, because we could hire women too, so it's just increases. and I think-
I'm an old fart.
Each police don't
I'm probably 30 or 40 years older than you, so I probably.
That much.
I'm gonna start using man intentionally now.
Well, I do
want your eyes roll back.
We do so
Well,
much DEO training that it.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
Sadie asked to change once in a while, they find it in one of the policies, but I go in, well, and I say selectmen on purpose,
Yeah.
and you watch your eyes.
She's gonna hit you with
I
it.
got that one.
They did it on the building. Office of Selectmen on the building. I didn't approve that.
And I let you-
How old is that sign?
It was put on this year.
Oh, I think it was there, and
Library.
I think what he did is he just remade what was there. Well, we can have that fixed. Oh, you know, what we'll do is bring select, Selectman and Sadie office.
Yeah.
Change it.
I have a question.
To select.
I have a question.
Yes, Sal.
Okay, so this sheet, the one that you passed out earlier, right? That basically shows that you have a increase over the 24 budget of
In the packet. Second page.
$700,000 in the operating budget and
Oh, yeah.
an additional, and then 498 less on the warrant article.
Yes.
Right? And we have an overall increase of 209 on the operating budget.
Correct.
Okay.
Harry,
And
it's a
then-
single sheet that was at the front of the packet.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
right
The
underneath
first page.
this
You
one.
got it. You got a big green.
That the overview.
There's some red on it.
Okay.
Okay.
That's a
And
big.
then on the revenue side, unless I miscalculate my brain here. In 24, we were anticipating 3,500,000.
Wait a minute, you got it back?
Hmm?
I have it back.
No, I make my own numbers.
Oh, okay, all right.
I make my own bag.
All right, go ahead.
I gotta scratch it somewhere, Mike. I can't keep it in my head. There was a time, but not anymore. Alright, so 3,534,237, and this year, 25, you're anticipating 3,301,000, which is a shortfall theoretically of 232. Is that right?
Yeah, and you'll see that on page 4 at the general fund total.
On the which?
Page
General
4,
fund
the
total.
revenue report from last period.
That's what I was doing. and have to buy.
Like 3 lines up on the
Alright,
line.
so for the general fund, it's the budget number was 3,243. And then 3,007, so it's still a 230 something shortfall, right? Right?
Yes.
Okay, so it's basically almost the same number. So that would be something that we'd have to make up in taxes, correct? Right, so the total of those two would be somewhere around 440 some odd $1,000. Where's the 586 that I keep hearing about? What is that?
Well, there's also the 400,000 of fund balance that we spent in 2024. So that wouldn't be spent in 2025, so that also gets factored in.
So basically, you have a $787,000 reduction in revenues along with the $209,000 increase. That's what we're working on right now.
So there's another 400 on the shortfall from the revenue side.
Yes.
That doesn't appear anywhere here.
It's on our tax rate and we posted all of our tax.
Right,
rates.
but it's not,
Yes.
we haven't seen it here anywhere yet.
In the past, you used to see it because it was down at the bottom and it said to come from unanticipated fund balance.
Right.
And there is nothing in any of this paperwork that says it.
So what we're gonna be working on for the next meeting is closing that gap as best we can, and then you guys will review it again.
Yeah, because I mean, that's a critical number.
That's correct.
Right.
That is the number it's really all about the revenues. It's only a 3.5% increase in total expenditures. It's really all about the $650,000 in lost revenue.
And I didn't hear anything that, based on his question, I still didn't hear anything that changes this document here that much.
Correct.
Okay, so when I look at this document, I see it's 9.3
Yeah.
down at the bottom.
Yeah.
You know, I did a quick check and it looked like it was correct.
Yeah, well, those two numbers that I had, Mike, that basically translates.
That's the one that had
the
The busted at one number, so that's what we're gonna fix.
Which one's busted?
Yeah, Mike Reese had caught it.
What is it, Mike?
So, I was trying to figure out a way to compare apples to apples, so I gave you the historical tax rate numbers. So you can see the estimated taxes to be raised. And I made a mistake trying to compare the 2025 to that, because we haven't gotten the 2025 tax rate yet. So I had to go and actually calculate it. So the 209,000 is what the expenditure side's going up. And then 787 is the less estimated revenues. So that total is the 997. So that was the break in the formula. I can't compare the 2025 estimated to the 2024 tax rate. It doesn't work. We have to calculate what is
So-
going up.
I don't know what you two talked about, but I explained it last year, I'll explain it again this year. The key thing is income less expense equals X, okay? If it's a negative number, which it will be until you set the tax rate, then the easiest way to figure out what your rate is going to be for next year based on the budget that we all approve, that's the revenue budget and the expense budget, neither of which has the money from unassigned fund balance, okay? The easiest way, and that's what this one says here. So I did not check that math, but I assume that it says here total appropriations is 7.6. And less anticipated estimated revenues of 3.7, and I didn't see the 245,000 this year. So the estimated revenue should be what's in this document here, and that's why I asked about it about 20 minutes ago. To see if in fact this revenue here is the same on that sheet there. If it is, if that revenue is 3,794,000, then it leaves an unfunded balance. Oh, I see.
Yeah,
Oh,
basically,
That's where the number, that's where the bust is.
yeah,
there you
That's a
go.
bust.
And that's what we're gonna be working on fixing now.
Okay, nice try, but
Yeah, and that sheet that you're
so
looking at-
that's when I heard the magic number of 25%.
Right.
Carrie, I was just gonna say something.
Yeah, so the sheet that we're all referring to, basically what I did was I forgot to consider that we're not gonna spend 400,000 in fund balance, which also affects the tax rate.
So the.
Now I'm feeling much worse. Now I feel the way.
But I.
That's why I raised it up.
Well, like, and this is why we had the conversation earlier, when she found this, we went through.
Like
and we're-
12 at the moment.
We're looking at
No, it's
what
more
the low hanging fruit is right now and what options do we have, and then we will bring back a menu for that. And also talking to the select board because there are warrant articles related to some other revenue sources, so we will have conversations.
So
Yes, sir.
you want to see what the rate's gonna be
Yeah, I've seen that sheet.
on this sheet here? The number that says 3,794,000.
Yeah,
Wait a minute, with the balance, right, the sheet that says estimated taxes, 3,811,000. Divide that by 460, they're saying 470. So divide that by $470 million,
mhm.
divided by 1,000, and that'll give you the rate.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate it.
So we will have an update for you.
By the way, I thought the 470 looked fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I missed that. Good catch, Michael.
Well, it's been, we've been looking and like, you know, and then Carrie Ann went back and started kind of over even with 15 interruptions today and found the calculation error, so we're back. Now we gotta do some of the decision making.
Right.
At the select board meeting the other night, you mentioned that there might be a lot of properties that are currently listed in current use that shouldn't be.
What we're saying is, it's been a while since then there's been a check, and I don't know if things have fallen through the cracks.
Right.
And it's time to do a, for lack of a better word, audit of
I mean, it's a.
where are we? Is there things that, because it's not about even necessarily collecting the current use revenue, it's about getting them back in the proper tax.
Right.
Paying taxes on the property, let the property be taxable.
Right.
So these are things that we need to look at. We wouldn't budget for that. That would be hopefully a. If we did find a few, it'd be nice to know that before April 1st.
Right.
Otherwise, it's not till the next April 1st.
Chet, is this, so that process, is there a process or is this an ad hoc type of thing?
When you say process would be
Like,
getting a list of all the current use properties, finding out what was in current use, and then going out and reviewing the existing property to see if it matches what's there.
yeah, but there's nothing from the state that says this is like an ongoing thing, like you must do this.
All
every
these
5
recordings are
years.
supposed to happen. We just, you know, and I don't think we're that far off, but I don't think we have found some things that, okay, this is questionable. And we have to
Generally
review.
with current use. Power issue.
Yeah. No, I think it's our assessor who's not a woman.
Well, current use, I just like, I was thinking about my property, you know, you did it once. Unless I subdivide or sell and pay a penalty, I mean, nothing's changing.
Well,
So,
but there's been a lot of land transfers that we don't know
Yeah, keep
got
up on-
reviewed.
Okay, oh, so that's the issue, because you would, in a perfect world, that would have been addressed at the time of the
Yes.
transfer.
Correct, and that's what we're not sure about.
People
'Cause
just
we-
don't do it,
And the only reason it's even come up as a thought is because there's been a couple like,
because the penalty's
This one-
pretty, I mean,
it's substantial.
Yeah, it
We-
really
Actually,
is.
this year we got a couple of checks, 70, 80, 90,000
Yeah,
dollars
yeah,
for
okay.
our use.
We have a question from the public.
oh, yes.
It's exciting.
Maybe do that.
I think we just have to.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got this.
Cool. I was at the select board meeting on Tuesday and Sadie knows this because she attends our meeting at the Conservation Commission, but land use change tax fees are definitely are something that we're looking at personally.
Can you say?
Great. My name's Cody Huzzy.
Thank you.
Was that the question? Yeah. The reason we started looking at is right now we have a $5,000 cap on revenue that gets taken from, the general collection and moved over to the conservation fund. So this issue that came up at the select board now tonight is definitely something that we're interested in and we'll be discussing next week at our meeting. One question that's come up is like, whose jurisdiction or legal authority is it to review properties in question? So that's one thing I just wanted to see if anybody had an answer to tonight.
I did select board, I mean, right?
The RA governs it and also supervises it. It's under the select board.
It is under select board. right?
But the DRA last did an audit, I think somewhere around maybe 2020. And Sam Green, who's now the director, actually came in with 2 or 3 people. And they went around and looked at the current use properties and nailed us on a bunch of things that weren't done correctly. And some of the changes were done. So for instance, every current use property was just put in as one value, and not dollar amount, but the quality of the, okay. And that was, we had to go back out and do that, and the assessing firm did all that. But I think it ought to be done again, it's 25, so.
Yeah, it's just, there, between
Transfer to
20 and
subdivision.
25, you're talking about a lot of land transfers. I mean,
Yeah.
it's been a crazy real estate market. It's time, we need to be looking, that's all.
Is it addressed in the subdivision process when that happens? But then I guess the subdivision itself.
It doesn't trigger,
It's
only the
it's
land
it's
use
the subsequent
switch
transfer,
to
yeah.
a residential property, like,
Yeah.
it's actually, when the assessor goes back out there,
Yeah.
we should be looking at that, but there's also been some things that are built that never got a permit, nobody knows they did, there's been, there's a little bit of gray area out there.
Well, it would seem that could be a place, and I think, Cody, as you mentioned, when everybody's raising here, where you could probably, I mean, it's still kind of probably nibbling around the edges. but,
Oh, yeah, no, it's not,
it's-
this is not a major, like,
But
okay,
still.
we got $1 million
Yeah.
out there.
Yeah.
Tighten it up the process.
It's just something, it's one of the things we just want to make sure we're in line with.
Because people should be paying. I mean,
Right.
And aerial photographs, that's the
Yeah.
other way you find it.
Right.
When they did the last one, there was a violation that came into being 30 years ago.
So yeah, there's a lot of little things like that that we just are trying to work on and making sure everybody's in the right place.
It's like the planning board, one of my little tasks of the planning board is go through the 33 properties and
Yep.
take a look at what we
Yeah, we're
got.
looking at all the town-owned properties because right now they're not being taxed, and it's like, okay, what are,
Do
we
we
asked,
really need them?
we asked the planning board to say, take a look at these pieces of land and tell us what has value, what is usable, what is it, and then we can make a plan. That would be until next year. So we need to start a review. on it.
Again, nibbling at edges.
Right.
But,
You get a pretty decent price for the beach.
yeah, well, there's a couple on here. I was wondering.
So yeah, there's a lot of things like that we just want to make sure we're in line.
Mike, you don't have to move away. You can just buy this one.
Yeah, by the beach.
By the beach.
Very popular in town if you want that.
There you go.
Put up a big gate.
I would just love it. Get a taco truck out there, clean up. So.
So, I guess the next thing is we have, I was thinking about what we've got left to do as a committee. We need to go through the budget as a committee now and make changes, vote on the line or the bottom lines. I have a feeling that that's probably gonna be at least a 2 meeting. Yeah, that's just my hunch here.
It just got worse.
Yeah, it'd be a 2 meeting thing, and then we've also got to deal with the warrant articles.
Right.
So that, in my mind, is probably like 3 more meetings. Our next one is scheduled for December 19, and we don't have anything on the agenda, so we could start that process. I'll put it before the committee to see what everybody wants to do. The first Thursday in January would be the 2nd, and I don't know if anybody wants to, people are gonna be around, or if people wanna have a meeting on the 2nd, yeah,
I have a grandson due to be born on the 1st,
okay.
so I'm not likely gonna be here.
Well, I put January
Maybe,
16,
well, she went early the last time, so maybe, but I don't know.
When's the hearing gotta be by?
that's what I don't know the answer to that.
I think it
The
might be the-
public hearing, because that's
When
the
are
other
when are
thing.
the warrant articles doing? Petition warrant articles.
I believe it was, gotta remember, it was around it.
No, it's before, it's January something, usually around the 10th or.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it was either the 10th or the 11th, it's right around
So
there.
here's the problem, you got, on Monday, all the petition warrant articles had to be in. Board of Selectmen select board.
The select board. Don't say board up, just say select board.
Select people. Those guys.
Executive.
Guys.
Oh, you're doubling it up.
Having fun. Whoever they are. Just to look at it on Tuesday. Then we have a hearing on it, usually we have another run at it on either Wednesday, but then we have the final hearing on Thursday. So, and I don't know what those dates are gonna
I
be.
thought it was the 8th and 9th you guys had on your potential
8th and 9th.
agenda.
Okay,
As our,
so
our
a
public
meeting
hearing,
on the
Yeah.
16th isn't gonna work.
it's definitely not. So we'd have to do either an off week or meet on the 2nd, and Chet won't be.
Well, okay, I would say it's 50-50 at best, but I can also zoom in if I have to.
Because when would we look at the warrant articles? We're not gonna, I mean, if we don't get through the budget, because there's how many warrant articles?
We got one night to look at it. It'd be Wednesday night usually.
You will have them ahead of time, though.
Yes.
Right now, there's
40.
40.
Jesus.
Well, yeah, but you're not.
all budget.
No, I-
You don't know.
Some of them are just like language things, some of them are like,
Just money.
what was,
We just do it.
All right, 35 then, no.
I mean,
That's way back. I think we won't be.
Right.
It's a lot.
I think I gotta go.
Plan about an hour to vote this year, huh?
I think we gotta go to a third meeting. Cause we're gonna be at 25.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out when, because
Well, do
Next
you wanna
one's-
do one next week?
next week,
No.
no.
Okay.
That was
Bless you, but what
very
about
thorough.
everybody else?
Right, well.
Can we get a quorum for next
I
week?
have other obligations, because I wasn't.
Thursday is the 2nd, is that right?
Thursday,
Yeah.
yeah, the 2nd of January. And we
Well,
can
the other
schedule-
thing
I
we
could
could
do
do
that.
is we could do a Monday night meeting that final week,
In the 6th?
yeah.
because the 7th is when the select board will be reviewing the warrant articles, and you guys could have drafts of it.
So 7th is the
That make-
select board, okay.
So why don't we put one on the 6th, and if we don't need it, we cancel it,
Get this room.
we should be that
I
way.
second that motion.
So what are
So-
we talking, the 19th, the 2nd and the 6th, or just, yeah, that's fine by me.
No.
We can Do that.
Yeah, the 6th and then the 8th and 9th
Yeah,
potentially, yeah,
8th and 9th.
for the public hearings.
19th, 2nd, 6th, 8th and 9th.
Yes.
Bring
That'll
sleep
be
and
okay.
I
Yeah,
stay
really.
here.
Well, the hope is once we get through this year, this becomes much simpler in the years going
That's
forward,
what I
because we'll
thought
have
it is,
a
so-
plan.
Do you want,
But-
I'll reach
well,
out to the chief to make sure the room's available.
Yeah.
And then maybe you can post notices for all these,
Yeah.
and then if we don't need them, that's great.
Monday, the 6th. The only conflict potentially, I think
Only.
that's fire department, I think, but I don't know if it's first Monday. Might be, I think,
But I think they
no, it's
meet.
second Monday, huh?
They meet over there, right?
Right, yeah, that's, okay, we're okay.
So, because we could always use that if they were here, if we needed
Yeah,
to.
we used to meet over
Yeah.
there.
So I'll write Ryan and see if these, so the 19th, the 2nd, well, we know the 19th we've got, but the 2nd, the 6th, the 8th and the 9th. The public hearing, now in the past, we've always started it later. Is that because of some other meetings that day?
On the final, on the Thursday, usually is the planning board. Conflict. So we started a half hour early or later.
Later, so 7:30.
Yeah.
Yes,
It's usually a pretty quick meeting.
Yeah, it is.
Ninth?
The 9th would be a
Yeah.
public hearing. Okay,
The other option is we could just meet from like 6 to 9. You could
Oh,
order
you
the
just
kids
figure it out
pizza that
so-
night.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then we just.
I don't know, we could,
September,
that would be like putting an extra hour in order to
Yeah.
not come down another night, I think. would be
Yeah,
okay.
that's,
So we would do that on what, the second?
the 19th of the second, those are your two choices.
Yeah, we could, does anyone feel like doing not do 6 to 9 one of those nights instead of coming down on the 6th also?
Maybe the 19th?
yes.
I could do that.
I like that. Anybody opposed to that?
And then
And what we'll try to do is a couple days ahead, we'll try and get the revision out.
Yeah.
So you guys can really get into it, have, really be focused on it and then knock it out.
Cause we can start with, in the past, we've started with just going down through, maybe that's still the easiest way to
It's
do it.
probably the easiest way.
Still the easiest way to
It
do it.
got more difficult recently, like in the last half hour. But yes, if it's okay with everybody else here, what I would do is send you an email. And I had a total of like 18 lines that I had questions about.
Okay.
And there are 5 that I think could have some significant savings and not conflict with what you got here.
Okay.
The difference between it is on all the numbers I looked at in the 18, it might save $300,000. If I looked at just the 5, it saves $160,000. All of a sudden, the $350,000 looks more important.
Yeah, it is.
So, and on those, it's more, I'll send it to you, and it'll have the line item, they'll say what the question is. And I'll circulate it to everybody at the same time, and I won't do it till this weekend, but I'll try to get it out this week.
That'll work.
We could do, we see how where we get on the 19th, and I suppose we could maybe do the same thing on the 2nd. I'm just, not having to come down is kind of nice, so. We're here, yeah, it gets late,
Well,
but
I would say that my goal for the 19th would be, we'll have everything that we think we can do, and
Yeah.
then it's whether we're just making any hard decisions or not,
Yeah.
and what is the net result? And then if we're still off, we gotta say, what's our target? I think that's the key.
okay,
Are we meeting at 6 o'clock on the 19th?
yes.
Yes.
Well, we have to make sure the room's available, but it probably is, right?
If it's available at 7, it'll be available at 6.
6, okay,
Then does Mike have to repost it?
yes.
Yeah.
So I'll coordinate with you,
Means great.
about the times, and then you can do a post.
And I should add the other meetings too.
Yeah.
Yes.
We haven't posted those yet.
Right. And did you get the final, not the, I don't know if there is ever a final, health insurance number for government employees?
Yes,
Because that was kind of up in the air when we went through it originally, right?
we got it like 2 versions ago.
It's in your
Oh,
system,
so what's in here is
is what we
good
just
enough.
got from them.
We just didn't talk about it.
Correct.
I remember originally, we were like, well, who knows? We got-
So I started handing out those summary pages so you can see like.
Is that in there?
Not this one, like.
Two meetings ago, she said, whatever that one is.
I
maybe 3
apologize. I
versions
missed
ago.
that.
Splitting up of accounts is difficult to compare apples to apples.
Yeah.
Over time anyway. So, what I did personally was I went through and looked at all the numbers. Under government building repairs and health insurance and utilities and a bunch of other things to compare. And the one that I will send over is a question about, computer services, it's doubled. And, over what it was, and I'm just seeing if there's any way we can save any money at all in that line, and that'll be the nature. And there was one other one, I forget what it was.
Well, computer services, the base contract got to be more, but we're not gonna be getting charged all the extras, so it's gonna end up about the same.
Yeah, but I did it
Okay,
I did it with what was budgeted, what was actually spent,
okay,
and what's in there for budget for next year.
Okay.
And with our new software, we can easily pull summary reports by
But,
the. board
Yeah, I
statement.
understand it's a good idea, I'm just trying to figure out. With all the things that the money is spent on, is there anything at all that can be reduced by any amount? Which now, as far as I'm concerned, opens up the issue of the full timers again.
right.
And it's not a huge amount of money, but it is when it's $300,000 difference is what we ended up with tonight. Thank you, Sal, and
Yeah.
thank you.
So that, well, we'll have a list of what we adjust between now and then also potential things. We'll just start
Well,
identifying.
the only other thing I could think of is what Lebanon's council did, and that was just say, okay, give us an increase of X and give us what your budget looks like and give us an increase of Y and tell us what your budget looks like. I'm not a big fan of that. As a matter of fact, I think it sucks, but on the other hand, it does mean you have to prioritize. So in other words, if the total budget is whatever it is, 7.6 million. If you had a cut $250,000, where would you go?
And that's what we were starting to talk about, and that's what will be reflected in the next version we send you,
I
but if
think
you send
those are
us.
the only ones that are gonna be weird that I'll send you.
So
Okay.
what percent increase are we aiming at? Cause I've gotten like no guidance.
I don't know.
One
We
would be
haven't
good,
talked about it.
Are there any funds that
Yeah,
are gonna
that's
be encumbered at all?
We're trying not to
Okay,
encumber funds.
but there might be some.
There's gonna be a little bit, I know John Bergeron asked for the amount of money we were putting to the meeting house to be encumbered, and I just got another request for a small amount.
Economic development was.
Yeah, that was the other one. Tom brought it up yesterday. I had it in my notes. So I think theirs is only like $5,000 or something like that.
35.
We're going to
35.
go down it before the end of the year.
Yeah, so that would have to be on the 17th.
I really like the idea of you guys telling us what you think. Given the options, you guys are the ones
Well,
doing
we're
this day
gonna,
to day.
you know, I know that, you know, obviously the 25% is not gonna be acceptable, but if we're, you know, I would say that 8% would be, 8 to 10% would be expected. And I would say that given what we're trying to do basically is write off $650,000 worth of revenue change this year is, you know, is it more like 12 or 15 this time? You know what I mean? And that's kind of where my brain is. I mean,
The lower end is always better.
I mean, there's no question. I mean, that's what the goal is. But, you know, we do have some things that just are what they are, and we'll have to deal with that.
Does anybody have an inkling of what the school is looking at?
I have not heard yet from this.
I heard something about they were looking to pay off the balance of the loan. They were looking for a bond or something.
The bond?
Yeah.
That'd be good, yeah.
Sorry?
I said that would be neat if they paid off $20 million.
Yeah, how'd they do that?
Well, I thought that, my understanding is there's $1 million balloon payment or something, or some sort of balloon
Something.
payment somewhere in there
Something.
that we're gonna have to refinance. That's, that's rumor. I don't have direct knowledge of that. But,
Well, maybe it would make sense to touch the school board
well,
and find out.
and we need, yeah,
what
there's
they're
some
thinking.
people I gotta reach out to, so. Good.
If you were 8 or 9, I'd be pleased.
8 or 9 is gonna be tough, but somewhere between that and 15 is where I think, and then it's gonna be, okay, what is there anything left?
And then that's when we go through and. Nibble away.
Pick up the extra 3
Yeah,
points
that-
we need to get to
Yeah, if you
10.
can be the nibblers, I
Well,
think.
I'll
you guys-
probably then, unless anybody feels strongly about the dollar amount, throw in the question. About if you had to make cuts of 400,000, just for the sake of argument, because it matches up with what we're not doing in the.
No, I'll start with the selectmen's budget.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's the right. way to go.
He's just gonna strangle,
Throw that ball.
when did they get that raise?
But what I'm thinking is like even at the national level, I don't know why we nickel and dime everything. So to me, you present your budget. And say, fine, we only are gonna give you 90% of what you ask. For. And you just take it across the board and everybody takes a hit the same way,
Well,
let the manager.
unfortunately,
That's
given
terrible.
the way,
I'll talk to you.
where we are with our expenses and the budget, it's almost like, well, if we trim all the fat that we think that we might have right now. It's like, okay, now what service do you wanna
Right.
reduce?
I know.
And we're gonna be getting to that quickly.
That's right, that's right.
You know, what service are we going to?
Coffee
provide?
mature process in my
Say we should
mind
put off
would be
the
why you
Road
giving-
thing.
There's an
giving
article in
everybody
the paper
when
every day
they
about
certain
that.
things.
That's the case, and that's why I said.
But we ought to leave it up.
Well, because
The school over there needs to cut $2 something million.
There's a quick story.
Because
I
the
interviewed
issue
the town
they've
manager
been,
in Allenstown.
spending like crazy for so many years.
One of the
Now they
questions
have
was,
to,
Why has
they
the town
reinstituted the penalty phase for
last
overspending.
5
I had a
years?
housekeeping note.
We get like,
And I said, what do you
40%.
think it is?
You
He said,
guys, your
"Well,
increase
it's
changed.
if we don't,
the
we
agenda.
go over
Yeah.
it.
Sometimes there's a guest.
For every
that
dollar
goes
over,
over
it's
it.
like $2 or $3.
Lawyer
They had
last
to
week
take
sat
that
there
out.
for 2
Yeah.
hours. Something he could
Yeah.
talk about.
Pay,
At least
and
my
it's
opinion,
just fine,
he
it's
sent
gonna
to
cut
cut
Yeah, I
back.
didn't even know.
Well,
Yeah,
no
that's a
shit, we
problem.
gotta cut
It's
something.
due.
That's the
Fire
way-
No, that's been a long time coming and they've been playing games with trying to get that.
Most of my boards do it. And a courtesy, they want to make it sit.
Yeah.
And it
They
was
were,
about-
they were called ESSER funds.
Yours are very
Yes,
exciting.
they were
So why-
specific programs that nobody eliminated.
That's why I say, they, you know,
So I think we
they
have
found
a,
money that.
can I just take
Yes.
over, Nate? We
Yeah,
have a lot
people-
of side
yeah,
conversations
so maybe
going
we'll
on, so I think.
do a
we're-
motion.
we're not-
Motion
yeah.
to adjourn.
All right, all those in favor?
I-
Aye, opposed?
Hey, no, I'm
So
like that.
6 o'clock on the 19th.
Yes.
Pardon, wait.
Maybe
Maybe I can bring pizza if people would like it.
Are you sprinting?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you, Mike. That's the problem. Not, all things are not equal.
This week.
No.